You are 18. You are trespassing. That was the only birthday message my father gave me. He did not look at my face. He checked his watch, waited for the second hand to hit midnight, and then shoved me backward onto the ice. I stumbled, gripping the doorframe to keep from falling into the snow. I called out to him, but he did not answer. Instead, Monica stepped out from behind him. She did not reach out to help me. She grabbed the collar of my heavy winter parka. "I paid for this," she said, yanking the zipper down so hard the fabric tore. I tried to pull back, screaming that it was 30 degrees below zero, but she hissed that it was property of the estate. She peeled the coat off my arms. Then, seeing the phone in my hand, she snatched that too. She kicked me off the mat and slammed the heavy oak door in my face. The deadbolt snapped shut. I heard the chain slide into place. I stood there in the dark, shivering in nothing but my thin waitress uniform, staring at the house I had cleaned for 10 years. They did not just kick me out. They stripped me. The porch light died, and the world vanished. I turned away from the house. Standing there begging would only freeze my tears to my face. I had one option. The guest cabin. It sounded charming. It was not. It was a glorified garden shed 100 yards down the slope. Uninsulated, unheated, and used to store my stepbrother Tyler's old jet ski equipment. The snow was waist deep. Every step was a negotiation with gravity. The wind screamed across the lake, turning the air into broken glass. It sliced through my waitress uniform, the thin polyester designed to handle spills, not sub-zero blizzards. By the time I found the rusted latch of the cabin door, my fingers felt like foreign objects attached to my wrists. I shoved the door open and collapsed inside. The air in there was stagnant and heavy, smelling of mildew and gasoline. It was not warm. It was just a coffin that had not been buried yet. The temperature gauge on the wall read 20 below. If I sat down, I would fall asleep. If I slept, I would die. "Move," I whispered, my lips cracked with the effort. I dropped to the filthy plywood floor. Burpees. Down, kick back, up, jump. My lungs burned. The cold air tasted like iron. "My name is Sierra. I turned 18 exactly 20 minutes ago. This was my party. Alone in the dark, doing calisthenics to keep my heart from stopping. 3. With every rep, the anger spiked hotter. It was not just the eviction. It was the math. That parka Monica ripped off my back cost $300. I paid for it picking up extra shifts at the diner on Main Street. I bussed tables until my back throbbed while Tyler sat on the couch playing video games on a console I bought him for Christmas. 4. I remembered the vacation to Cabo last year. My father told me they were tight on cash and asked me to cover the plane tickets. They never paid me back. I paid $2,000 to watch them drink margaritas while I babysat Tyler, who is 16 and perfectly capable of watching himself. 5. The truth hit me harder than the floor. I was not a daughter to them. I was a tenant. A live-in maid. An ATM with a heartbeat. They did not love me. They just loved that I was useful. And tonight, the moment I legally became an adult, my utility expired. My legs were shaking. But the friction was working. A tiny thread of warmth unspooled in my chest. They thought I would curl up in the corner and cry for my father. They banked on me being weak, but they forgot where I came from. I did not grow up with silver spoons. I grew up carrying heavy trays and dodging grabby hands at the diner. I stood up, breath pluming in the dark like dragon smoke. The cold was still there, biting at my extremities, but it felt different now. It was not just weather anymore. It was clarity. The wind rattled the thin walls, sounding like a wolf scratching to get in. Let it scratch. I was not going to freeze. I was going to burn everything down. 2 in the morning arrived not with silence, but with a sound that made my blood run colder than the air. Weeping. It was not the wind. It was a woman's voice, soft and jagged, sobbing inside the walls of the cabin. I stopped moving. My sweat froze instantly against my skin. The sound was coming from the ventilation grate above the old jet ski rack. It sounded like a mother crying over a grave. My heart hammered against my ribs. I backed away, my boots crunching on the dirty plywood. I hit the back wall and spun around toward the window. That is when I saw him. Standing in the blizzard, 10 feet from the glass, was a tall, black figure. He was perfectly still. The wind whipped the snow into a frenzy around him, but he did not sway. He was just watching me, waiting. Terror is a chemical. It flooded my system, overriding the cold, overriding the logic. My brain screamed one command: run. I reached for the door handle. I needed to get out. I needed to run into the woods, scream for help, bang on the neighbors' doors a mile away. I could not stay in this box, with the crying walls and the watcher outside. The sob stuttered. It repeated, skipping like a broken record. It was not a ghost. It was a glitch. I pulled my hand back. I stared at the dark vent up near the ceiling. The fear did not vanish, but it changed. It hardened. I scanned the room. In the corner, next to a pile of oily rags, lay a rusted iron fire poker. I grabbed it. The metal bit into my palm. I did not creep. I climbed onto the jet ski rack and swung the iron bar with everything I had left. The plastic grate shattered. I reached into the dark hole and my fingers brushed against plastic. I ripped it out. It was not a spirit. It was a baby monitor. It was duct taped to the metal duct, plugged into a dusty orange extension cord that snaked back through the wall toward the main house. The red power light blinked at me like a robotic eye. I crushed the device in my hand. The voice died. I looked out the window again. The shadow man had not moved. Of course he had not. I walked to the glass and squinted. It was not a monster. It was my father's old trench coat draped over a snow shovel, propped up to face the cabin. I sank down onto the jet ski seat, clutching the broken monitor. Most people would think this was just cruelty, a sick prank by a bored stepbrother. But I knew Monica. Monica does not do pranks. She does PR strategies. This was insurance fraud engineering. If I simply froze to death, the autopsy would show hypothermia. Accidents happen. But insurance companies investigate accidents. They interview neighbors. They check for negligence. But what if the neighbors reported hearing a girl screaming about ghosts in the middle of the night? What if I ran out into the storm, raving about voices in the walls, and died in a snowbank? Then it is not negligence. It is a psychotic break. It is a tragedy caused by the victim's own mental instability. They were not just trying to kill me. They were writing the script for my autopsy. They wanted to destroy my credibility before they destroyed my pulse. I looked at the red light fading on the broken monitor. 10 minutes ago, I was a terrified little girl ready to run to her death. But now, fear burns hot and fast. It consumes you. But rage? Rage is an engine. It runs cold. It runs forever. I gripped the fire poker until my knuckles turned white. I was not going to run. I was not going to scream. I was going to survive this night. And tomorrow, I was going to make sure the only thing that got buried was them. Dawn broke like a bruised knuckle. Purple, cold, and unforgiving. The wind had finally died, leaving the world frozen in a terrifying silence. I pushed the cabin door open. The hinges screamed, shattering the quiet. I stepped out into the drifts. My legs felt like wood, stiff and unresponsive, but I was moving. I was alive. I did not look back at the main house. I knew they were sleeping, warm under their down comforters, dreaming of the insurance payout that was never coming. I slogged toward the county road at the edge of the property. Every step sent a jolt of pain up my shins. My waitress uniform was stiff with frozen sweat. At the trailhead, a battered beige station wagon sat idling, exhaust puffing white clouds into the air. Haughty, she was technically homeless, living out of her car since the disbarment hearings 5 years ago. But she still wore her glasses on a chain like she was about to bang a gavel. She saw me stumbling out of the woods and threw the passenger door open. I collapsed into the seat. The heat in the car was blasted to the maximum. It hit me so hard I almost threw up. The thawing process hurts worse than the freezing. My fingers started to burn as the blood rushed back. Hattie handed me a thermos cup and told me to drink. I gripped the cup with both hands, shaking so hard the coffee sloshed onto my jeans. I told her they rigged it. The monitor. The sounds. Hattie said she knew. She did not look shocked. She reached into the pocket of her oversized wool coat and flicked a tiny black square onto the dashboard. An SD card. I stared at it and asked how she got it without going near the house. Hattie smirked, tapping the steering wheel. She told me Tyler was a sadist but a moron. He had driven down to the diner at 6 in the morning, probably to brag to his friends or get an early breakfast while waiting for my body to be found. He had parked right next to her. She shook her head, disgusted. He had left his car unlocked. The trail camera was sitting right there on the passenger seat. He was probably going to upload the footage to his laptop later to rewatch his handiwork. She simply reached in and took the memory card while he was inside ordering pancakes. I picked up the tiny piece of plastic. It was light, but it felt heavy. This was it. The shovel. The snow. The proof. I told her to take me to the precinct. I wanted them arrested immediately. Hattie snatched the card back and tucked it into her bra. She refused. She explained that if we went to the police now, Monica would call her lawyer. She would claim the video was out of context. She would say she did not know what Tyler was doing. She would post bail, fly to the Caymans, and I would spend the next 5 years fighting a legal battle I could not afford. She put the car in gear. The police take reports. We needed a confession. We needed to trap them in a lie so big they could not buy their way out of it. Hattie pointed to the local news radio playing softly. The announcer was talking about the tragic disappearance of a local teen. Monica was holding a vigil at the church in 2 hours. She wanted to play the grieving mother on live television. Hattie suggested we give her the performance of a lifetime. The First Methodist Church smelled of lilies and expensive lies. I stood at the back of the sanctuary, dripping melting snow onto the plush red carpet. My waitress uniform was stained with mud, my hair matted with ice. I looked exactly like what they wanted me to be. A broken girl who had lost her mind in the storm. At the front of the room, bathed in the warm glow of the stage lights, Monica stood at the pulpit. She wore black. Not just any black, but a tailored, designer dress that screamed grieving but elegant. Television cameras lined the walls. Half the town was sitting in the pews. Monica sobbed into the microphone, dabbing her dry eyes with a lace handkerchief. She called out to her sweet, troubled Sierra. She claimed they tried so hard to help me fight my demons. She begged me to come home. The crowd murmured sympathetically. I took a deep breath. The air in the church felt thick, suffocating. This was the trap. She was establishing the narrative live on air. Sierra has demons. Sierra is unstable. I pushed the double doors open until they hit the bumpers with a dull thud. Heads turned. One by one. Then in waves. I croaked out the word Mom. My voice cracked perfectly. The silence that hit the room was absolute. Monica froze mid-sob. Her eyes went wide. For a split second, the mask slipped, and I saw the raw, naked terror underneath. She thought she was looking at a ghost. She thought she had killed me. Then, her PR training kicked in. She screamed my name and ran down the center aisle, arms outstretched. The camera swiveled. The crowd gasped. I met her halfway. She threw her arms around me, squeezing tight, not to comfort me, but to control me, to check if I was solid, to physically restrain me if I started screaming accusations. I went limp in her arms. I let the tears come. I wailed that I was so scared, burying my face in her shoulder so the cameras could not see my dry eyes. Monica whispered that it was okay. Her voice was tight and low, vibrating against my chest. She told me I was safe, but sick. She said they would get me to the facility tonight. She was already executing the next phase. The facility. I leaned in close to her ear and whispered that she smelled like birthday cake. She stiffened against me like she had been electrocuted. That was the signal. In the front row, an elderly woman in a wheelchair, her face hidden by a heavy black veil, suddenly lurched forward. Hattie knocked a heavy metal microphone stand directly into the audiovisual table. It crashed to the floor with a sound like a gunshot. Hattie cried out for help, flailing her arms. The technician, a kid named Kevin who I went to school with, jumped up from his chair to help her. He turned his back on the laptop. Monica flinched at the noise, loosening her grip on me just an inch to look at the commotion. That was my window. 3 seconds. I kept my left arm around Monica's waist, anchoring her. With my right hand, hidden by the bulk of our bodies, I reached out. My fingers brushed the warm plastic of the laptop. I yanked the church's USB drive out of the side port. I slid Hattie's drive in. Kevin turned back around, helping Hattie sit up. I pulled my hand back and wiped a tear from my cheek. The swap was done. Monica pulled away, gripping my shoulders with bruising force. She looked at my face, searching for a wire, a weapon, anything. She told the crowd we needed to get me to a doctor, claiming my mind was not well. I looked up at her with wide, innocent eyes. I told her I knew, but I just wanted to see the video she made for me. I pointed at the big projection screen behind the pulpit. Monica smiled. It was the smile of a shark that thinks the water is clear. She agreed, and waved at Kevin to play the tribute. Kevin hit the spacebar. The giant projection screen descended from the ceiling, humming softly. The lights in the sanctuary dimmed, leaving Monica and me bathed in a single, holy spotlight. Monica whispered that this was for me, squeezing my hand. She was ready for the montage of baby photos and piano music. She was ready to cry on cue. The screen flickered to life. It was not a baby photo. It was grainy, black and white night vision footage. The timestamp in the corner read 11:45 at night. The church went dead silent. On the screen, a figure in a heavy coat walked into the frame, dragging a snow shovel. The infrared camera turned his eyes into glowing white orbs, but the face was unmistakable. Tyler. He was not clearing a path. He was piling heavy, wet snow against the door of the guest cabin. He packed it tight, layer after layer, turning the exit into a wall of ice. A murmur rippled through the pews. On screen, Tyler stopped. He looked at the cabin window where I had been freezing inside and laughed. It was not a sound, but his shoulders shook. He pulled out his phone, typed a text, and gave a thumbs up to the main house. Then the camera angle shifted. It showed the main house window. The curtains parted. Gavin's face appeared. My father. He looked at the cabin. He saw the barricaded door. He saw the trap. And then he closed the curtains. The gasp from the crowd sounded like all the oxygen leaving the room at once. Monica's grip on my hand crushed my knuckles. She stared at the screen, her mouth opening and closing like a fish on a dock. She shrieked at Kevin to turn it off, claiming it was a hack. Kevin did not move. He was staring at the screen, paralyzed. Monica spun toward the audience, screaming that it was a deep fake. Her face was a mask of pure panic. She pointed a shaking finger at me, claiming I was trying to frame them and that I was mentally unstable. The crowd was confused. They looked from the screen to Monica. Doubt was creeping in. Monica was good. She was using the AI defense. If she kept screaming loud enough, she might just create enough doubt to walk out of here. I did not argue. I did not scream back. I stepped into her personal space and whispered the word, Mom. She glared at me, her chest heaving. I told her to stop, keeping my voice low, just for her. I said I knew it was over and I did not want to go to jail for hacking. I offered to sign the insurance payout to her shell company right now. Monica blinked. The greed flickered behind her panic. I lied smoothly, telling her I was transferring the $2.5 million. I claimed to have the banking app open, but said the bank had just sent a two-factor authentication code to my phone. I could not approve the wire without the code. I held out my hand and told her to give me my phone. She looked at the crowd. They were turning hostile. She looked at the screen. Tyler was still shoveling. She looked at me. She did the math. If she had the money, she could hire the best lawyers in the state. She could spin this. She could survive. But she needed the cash today. She reached into her designer clutch and pulled out my cracked phone. She shoved it into my hand and hissed at me to do it. I took the phone. The screen was cold against my palm. I did not open the banking app. I swiped up. I stepped back toward the microphone. My voice boomed through the church speakers. I told her she was right. Technology can do anything. I tapped the screen. But it cannot make you say this. I held the phone directly to the microphone and hit play on the cloud voice memo I had synced the night before. The sound was crystal clear. The acoustics of the church amplified every syllable. There was the sound of forks hitting plates. Then Monica's voice asked if the heater was off. Tyler's voice replied that it was disconnected, and that he put the baby monitor in the vent. He said he was looping the crying track now, and that I was going to lose my mind before I froze. Monica's voice replied that it was good. She said if I ran out screaming, the coroner would write psychotic break on the certificate. She explained that suicide implied negligence, but insanity implied I was broken. She said the insurance pays out double for accidental death due to mental illness. Tyler asked to pass the cake. Monica said, "Happy birthday, Sierra. Goodbye." The recording ended. I lowered the phone. The silence in the church was heavy, physical, and terrifying. I looked at Monica. Her face had gone gray. There was no spin for this. No deep fake defense. That was her voice, eating my birthday cake, planning my death. "Run," I whispered. The silence did not last long. It broke with the sound of sirens screaming toward the church parking lot. Monica did not run. She could not. The crowd had formed a tight, angry circle around the altar, blocking every exit. She looked at the faces of her neighbors, people she had hosted for dinner, people she had lied to for years, and she saw no sympathy, only disgust. When the heavy wooden doors burst open and the uniformed officers stormed in, the facade finally cracked. Monica shrieked that it was Tyler, pointing a trembling finger at him. She claimed it was his idea, and that she was asleep the whole time. Tyler, who was already being shoved against the wall by a deputy, whipped his head around. His eyes bulged. The loyalty he thought they shared evaporated the second the handcuffs touched his wrists. He screamed back that she was a liar. He shouted that she bought the shovel and told the police to check her credit card. He yelled that she looked up the weather report and told him when to do it. They tore each other apart. I stood by the microphone, watching them destroy what was left of their dignity. They were not a family anymore. They were just two rats in a bucket, fighting for the last breath of air. As they were dragged out the side door, screaming obscenities, a silence settled over the sanctuary. One person was left standing at the altar. Gavin. My father. He looked smaller than I had ever seen him. His shoulders were slumped, his face gray and wet with tears. He looked at the empty space where his wife and stepson had just been standing. Then he looked at me. He took a shaky step forward. He croaked my name. He said he did not know it would go that far. He thought they were just scaring me. He reached out a hand, like he expected me to take it, like he expected me to hug him and tell him it was okay because he had not held the shovel. I did not step back. I did not flinch. I just looked at his hand. I asked him if he really did not know. He wept and swore he did not do anything. He said he just wanted peace. I told him that was exactly it. He did not do anything. That was his crime. I pointed to the screen, where the frozen image of him closing the curtains was still projected. I told him he saw the wolf eating his daughter. And he did not grab a gun. He did not call for help. He just turned up the television volume so he would not have to hear the bones crunch. His hand dropped. He crumbled, sobbing into his palms. He whispered that he had nowhere to go, and that they would take the house. I told him I knew. I told him it is cold outside, and to make sure he wears a coat. I turned my back on him. I walked down the center aisle, past the cameras, past the shocked neighbors, and pushed through the double doors. Hattie was waiting in the parking lot. The sun was out. It was blindingly bright against the snow. She held up 2 steaming cups of coffee. She asked if I was ready. I said I was. I got in the car, and we drove away. I did not look in the rearview mirror. Justice was not instant, but it was absolute. With Hattie acting as my legal counsel and the cloud recording as undeniable evidence, the district attorney did not offer a plea deal. He went for the throat. Monica was convicted of conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, and child endangerment. The judge, a woman who did not blink once during the sentencing, gave her 18 years in state prison. She will not be eligible for parole until she is 62. The court also seized her assets. The house, the cars, the hidden accounts. Everything was liquidated to pay restitution. The final check written to me, after legal fees and debts were settled, was for $142,000. It was not millions, but it was enough. Tyler, being 17, was tried as a juvenile but sentenced as an adult. He is currently serving 7 years in a youth detention facility. The psychological evaluation Hattie demanded proved what we already knew. He lacks the capacity for empathy. And Gavin? He was not charged criminally. Being a coward is not a felony in Minnesota. But he lost everything else. The bank foreclosed on the house 3 months later. I heard from a friend at the diner that he is renting a basement room on the south side, working inventory at a hardware store. I have not seen him since the church. But 6 months ago, a letter arrived at my new apartment. The envelope had a prison stamp on it. It was from Monica. I stood in my kitchen, the morning sun warming the floorboards, and held the envelope. I did not open it. I knew exactly what it would say. It would be 3 pages of gaslighting. She would say she forgave me. She would say she did it for the family. She would try to plant one last hook in my brain. I walked over to the stove, turned on the gas burner, and held the corner of the envelope to the flame. I watched the paper curl and blacken. I dropped it into the sink and watched it turn to ash. I did not feel angry. I did not feel sad. I felt nothing. It was the most beautiful feeling in the world. Hattie called out from the living room that coffee was ready. She was sitting on my couch, reviewing case files for her appeal. She is trying to get her law license reinstated. Next to her was Chloe, a girl I met in my emergency medical technician certification class. We were studying for finals. This was my life now. A small apartment with big windows. A job I loved. And people who did not view my existence as a transaction. I sat down between them. Hattie passed me a mug. Chloe cracked a joke about tourniquets. We laughed. It was not a perfect life. I still had nightmares about the cold sometimes. But when I woke up, I was not alone. If you are watching this, and you are holding on to a family member who hurts you because you share the same last name, listen to me. Blood is just biology. It is an accident of birth. Family is loyalty. Family is the people who stand in the storm with you, not the ones who lock the door. You are allowed to walk away. You are allowed to burn the letter. You are allowed to save yourself. Because the only thing you owe the people who broke you is the view of your back as you move on.